What do you think? I think, Sam, you'd probably be good for this question. What can hosts do to make it the best possible gig for musicians? I can't speak.
So if you're putting on a gig, the best thing to do is be prepared. You try and come up with a plan and let the musicians know. For example, or maybe a week before, say, we plan to, can you get there for 7? We'll try and do a sound check at 8, play at 9. It never goes to plan, but as long as you've got that in place, as much as information as you can to give the musicians beforehand, especially if it's their first time. Oh, Will's laughing. Yeah, you know, I've put gigs on for Will before, and you know, it's not always gone right, but you just keep going. The other thing is really important is the sound check. I know so many bands who wouldn't sound check or just do a line check before they play. If you can get their sound right, even if they don't quite agree with you, if it goes well on the actual gig, it's perfect. The other thing, if you can, if the band's travelled a long way, just see if you can get them some refreshments as they arrive, something like that. If you can greet them on arrival, if they're not there from the town, and you know, it's the first time in the area, if you can be there to greet them, maybe help them in with equipment, it makes a massive difference.
Great. Anyone else want to jump in there? Yep.
Okay, so this one, I feel like, Will, you were saying how you sort of started off on your own, but now you're in a band. When you kind of started playing with other people and getting gigs, how did you get the funds to be able to buy all of the equipment and all the electricals when perhaps you didn't have much? I don't know.
It was a case of being realistic. To be honest, I had a day job. I saved up money from that day job to buy the necessary gear, really, and also it was with me. It was a gradual process. So it was sort of a case of save up for a guitar, get a guitar, and then thought, oh, hang on, I might need. It took me probably 5 years after that to get a tuner. But it's such a gradual thing, and realistically, early on, you're gonna need another job unless you stumble upon some kind of incredible deal. You're going to need another job to fund it. But save up from that job to get whatever you need, and just focus on your music. Yeah, that's it, really.
Can I put in a point here? When the first band I ever joined was at uni, and I could afford a bass guitar, but no amp or anything. And when we were gigging, it's amazing. If you get a gig with other bands, quite often, if you just ask them, I lent a bass amp on every gig bar one. I was able to get sorted, and even then we could go direct through the PA. So don't let that put you off either. If you can get the instrument, you don't necessarily need to get all the equipment straight away if there's people there to help.
Yeah, Will?
Yeah, borrowing is obviously, it's a really great way to get equipment as well. Also, the vast majority of venues that put on regular music will have a PA of some sort. They will have microphones of some sort. You don't need to. I mean, there are some venues that don't, but most do, and you don't need to worry about all that kind of thing. If save up, get an instrument, and just get good on it. And it doesn't have to be a posh instrument either. Just get whatever you're comfortable playing and get good at it.
Great. Will, do you think it's possible to get gigs playing original music, or is it easier to get gigs playing covers?
I've written original music since I was very, very young. But I started out playing covers. I started out, as I said before, playing classical piano and jazz piano and things in a hotel. It was I think it is getting easier to get gigs for original music, but I think if you want to make a living out of it, to start with at least covers, it's good to have that option. Yeah.
Yeah, Hannah.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of kind of residencies and what was probably framed as jazz duo, although we weren't particularly jazzy. But what that does is it actually means that you're looking at what do audiences like, what songs make them tick, what's a good chorus, what chord progressions are you using. In the same way, because I know BlueJam does a lot with jazz, the first thing in trying to learn that vocabulary is transcribe. Transcribe, 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 learn the vocab. And it's the same with if you're learning pop songs or jazz songs. And it is a really good income. I think some musicians might struggle a little bit to, you know, am I selling my soul? But you know what, there's far worse ways to earn money. There's far worse things, regardless of the money, than making people happy and entertaining people. And so what if your background music, does that matter? You're still getting to perform, and if you're getting paid for it, that's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I certainly funded a large portion of my sort of teens and 20s singing a lot of covers. It just teaches you an incredible amount. You're learning stuff, you're listening to how singers are interpreting songs as well. So I wouldn't knock it. I don't know if it's necessarily easier to get those gigs. Again, it depends on what's your why, what's your end goal, what do you want out of it. I don't know if it's very easy to marry the two. I don't know if you can get booked for a covers gig or a jazz gig and then slide too many of your own ones in, but I guess it depends on the venue, and you have that conversation with whoever's booking you.
I guess you can always put your own spin on covers, can't you?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, things like Postmodern Jukebox, there's heaps of examples of people that cover and then they make it a whole thing of their own. Yeah.
Great, so this is kind of aimed at anyone, so if you want to answer, just say once you've gotten a gig, so you know that you've got a gig, is it important to kind of cater your setup to where the venue is, like a pub or a restaurant? Do you need to change your setup for it? Sam?
Yeah, I would say it's very important. I would say if you're a full rock and roll heavy band and you're playing, say, a 30 capacity venue, a pub, say, if you can try and hold it, you'll get a much better sound and have a much better audience reaction if you can tone down your equipment, keep it quieter. One of the worst things you can do is be too loud for your room, the room you're playing. And it's maybe old with rock and roll, less now with what's popular, but it did used to be the way that bands would just be too loud in small venues, and it's really important that way.
Will, did you want to say something? Yeah.
I did. Yeah, another option with that we quite often do, if it's a really small venue or just a quieter venue, then, because we can be quite a loud band, but we strip it down to an acoustic duo set with just two of us, acoustic guitar, maybe a piano, and sing. And it still sort of represents the band, and it does still sound like us, but it's more suitable for the room. If we'd have gone in there, yeah, all guns blazing, it would have just sound ridiculous. So you really do have to adapt to a venue, yes.
Cool. Next questions for anyone and everyone. What do people look for in a band to give you the opportunity to perform somewhere, like a pub or a private venue? Yeah, Will?
Something that it sounds really obvious, but being good is important.
Yeah.
Like,
guess it'd help.
Yeah, but you do see bands, and an open mic or something, it's totally different. But if you've got a paid gig, you do sometimes see bands and you just think they're winging this. They're underprepared. They're not even really trying. And I think at whatever stage you are in a career, you need to treat every single gig with respect. If that gig is headlining the pyramid stage at Glastonbury, or if it's your local pub to 3 people at the bar, you should always treat every gig with respect, because firstly, it just doesn't look good, but also you never know who might be there. One of those 3 people at the bar could run some major record label or one of the other venues in the town or something like that. So yeah, treat every gig with respect, basically.
Sam, do you want to go?
Yeah, I've got to say I've booked people before to play various things, from just seeing them at an open mic or a pub. It really does not matter where you play. They could be anyone, just to really illustrate what Will was saying.
Great. Hannah?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going off topic, and I feel like Will says everything that I'm going to say. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. I mean, I got my very first ever paid thing, which was singing at somebody's wedding, because they saw me in a school, literally like GCSE kind of performance, and they were like, will you sing at our wedding? And then somebody else heard me somewhere else, and then they were like, oh, my dad's got a jazz band, will you sing in that? And then I was singing at a wedding, and there was a DJ who happened to be one of the guests, and he's like, will you sing on my track? And it's that, be consistently as good as you can be, because you never know who's watching. You never know. I don't know if that was part of the question, but
it was very interesting anyway.
So this next one's kind of about being able to promote your music. So it's just for anyone again. When you're trying to get a venue, what should you actually send to the venue? What should you promote? And sort of within that question, if you could explain anyone what a press kit is, because me and Naomi hadn't heard of it before Wiley said so.
Yeah.
Sam,
okay.
yeah.
So it entirely depends on who you're trying to push for. So first, I'll say your press kit is basically like a CV for your band. It should have a bio, photos, anything that, if you ever see a gig advertised on a Facebook event, in a newspaper, and there's a bit about the bands and stuff, that's normally come from their press kit. Links to music is a must. And also, you really you need to be honest with the people who you're trying to get a gig with. If you say, go up to a venue and say, yeah, I'll be able to bring 100 people, we're really good, and it's your first ever gig, and you bring no one, that's not going to be good for you or the promoter. It would be best to be honest and say, look, we're new, can we support someone sometime? We've got this kind of stuff. And more often than not, they will be there to help you, and because venues do want to nurture new music, because people come up through all the time. And I'm sure, like Will, for example, you would have had your first ever Brickyard gig, might not be known, but you've sold it out at Christmas and types of things. It's amazing, just being honest with different people, how much you'll get back.
Yeah, Will?
Yeah, I think Sam absolutely covered everything there. Just a little other thing. Yeah, send photos and make yourself look quite professional. Even if it is your first gig, just try and make it look quite professional. It makes a huge difference. As Sam was saying about the Brickyard gigs, our first ever gig at the Brickyard with a former band, we had, I think there were 3 people there. Any of you who've been to the Brickyard can imagine what that was like. And that was 3 people, other than, there was a support band as well, but they went home. So we were there playing, we were playing to 3 people. And it wasn't great. But the more you do,
Got to
the more
start. Yeah, so. Great, thank you.
Okay, what do you think can establish a good or bad reputation as a musician? Anyone? Hannah?
I think it's musician / human being attitude. Just have a good attitude. Just turn up, do what you say you're going to do, reply to emails, be on time, don't cause stress, don't be a diva, know your hierarchy. Especially if you're starting out, be a people pleaser and get yourself known, because I've booked heaps of musicians for all sorts of stuff, and being a great musician is 50%. Being a really nice person and being an average musician might actually get you a little bit further. It really, really will. I know who I'd rather have on stage with me. I'm a singer, so I'm inherently insecure and doubting if my stuff's good enough. So I don't want a guitarist who's like too cool for school. I want somebody who's supporting me on stage, even if their solo isn't as good as somebody else's solo, or their jazz chord isn't quite as funkily voiced as somebody else's. Personality and building that team around you. So I think it's just attitude. Have a good attitude, be professional, enjoy it, do it because you love it.
Anyone else? Will?
Yeah, exactly. Again, what Hannah said, she said what I was going to say. Professionalism, and not in a boring way, just be nice to people, but also be sincere. If you're playing with a band and you think they're wonderful, tell them. If you're playing with a band and you think they're awful, don't go up and go, oh, you were amazing, you're the best thing ever, because they'll see through it. People aren't idiots. People will notice. Just be sincere, be nice. And another key thing is, if you want a good reputation as a musician, it's networking again. Get to know people. Get to know people at the venues you're playing. Thank the sound man. Just be nice. Yeah, being nice really does help.
Great. So this question is kind of similar to the others, but if you want to add anything or any experiences perhaps, what would you say is the best way to kind of get promoters to know you as a musician and get your name out, and how to sort of network, and how important is it? Yeah, Sam?
Yeah, the first thing is play. When you're first starting out in your local areas, Will said earlier, play as much as you can, right? You want to be able to, the only way you're going to build a following of people is by playing to as many people, be very well rehearsed if you can, but often once you've done a gig, and you'll often notice stuff that doesn't work that you thought would work, right? But with the promoters, for instance, myself, I often will book people that I've seen live a few times, and it doesn't need to, if they don't necessarily have to book a lot of people, but if they've just had really good performances consistently, people do talk, and you share between different promoters and different musicians. So just get out and play.
Yeah, Will?
Something to add with, it's not necessarily the best way to get the promoters to know you, but it's a good way to build up a good reputation, is don't rely on promoters to do all of the work. You see a lot of bands who think that all they have to do is get a gig and then turn up and play it. And they think, well, the promoter didn't get enough people through the door. It's just, well, the band didn't get enough people through the door either. And it's a two-way street, and you need to both really work to push a gig. And you can't rely on promoters just to do that. And if you do rely on promoters to do that, as Sam said, promoters know each other and promoters will talk.
Yeah, Sam?
Yeah, and I just want to follow up with that as well with etiquette. Say if you've been booked for a band in to play a gig in a local town, say it's ticketed, and the week before you get offered a free gig, just don't take that free gig if you've already booked a gig before it. It's no matter how good you are, you're going to have the more you play in an area, you're going to have diminishing returns, and it's much better to play this one gig and do the best you can, and then leave it a month to the next one.
Good advice there. We have, oh yeah, Hannah, sure.
I think I'm preempting you because I've just seen there's a few questions. So I was just going to slide in with the, if you are organising an online gig, how do you find artists? So a lot of it is, it's just networking. I'm a barnacle and I just stick to people and there's no getting rid of me. But I think I'm also naturally wired to connect people together. So if someone's like, oh, I really want to learn to drive, I'm like, oh, I know a driving instructor. Oh, I know, you want a ukulele? I know, yeah. So this is kind of how I'm wired. I'm really rubbish at things like cleaning and being tidy and organisational things like that, but I'm very good with the people side. So in terms of finding people to play at the gigs that I'm doing, a lot of it is people that I've crossed paths with. I add people on Facebook. I keep in touch with people. It can be a little bit exhausting, but as I think me and Will share half a brain each or something. I think you've got 3/4 of a brain and I've got the leftovers. So Will said, it has to come from a genuine place. It absolutely has to, and you know when you're being authentic, and everybody else knows as well. But I think keeping in touch with people, and you just never know. It's not in a, oh, I need you now, but we all need each other. It comes back to this connection. But in terms of finding people, I've got heaps of people on my Facebook, and then I'm like, oh, they'd be great. Oh, yeah. And then your brain just, oh, that person, that person, that person. Certainly through BlueJam, I've booked a few people through BlueJam. They might recommend somebody. I had an issue my last online gig. I'd got somebody booked in Nashville, which felt like it was going to be brilliant. But actually, the time difference meant that an evening gig for us was in the middle of the day, and she suddenly had childcare issues that she couldn't get out of. And I was like, oh my God, I've got less than 24 hours to sort out a replacement act. So get quick on Instagram, quick firing out messages. People are really helpful. People are, hey, recommend this person. And I think having really good social media, certainly having examples of your music. I don't have heaps and heaps of followers on social media because my audiences are a little bit older. They don't engage in the same way. So I think it's knowing your audience, knowing your venue. There's no point in me phoning up a venue that does a lot of rock and indie because it's not my scene at all. So it's not beneficial to encourage that relationship with a promoter or a venue. But how do I find people? It just happens because I create a network, especially through Facebook and Instagram, where people that you're following, people are so responsive. People are so responsive and so flattered. Hey, will you do my gig? I don't know. A lot of people have still got imposter syndrome. Little old me, I still feel like 14-year-old me at the piano in my bedroom. I still feel exactly the same. And I think there was another one about marketing. Do you want me to carry on, or do you want me to shut up for a bit?
No, it's fine. Carry on.
There was one about how do you fund an online gig. I get people to pay, so people pay what I consider to be quite a small amount. Again, my audience is a little bit older, so we charge £5 and then they get a Zoom link and then they log in and they watch it via the Zoom link. So I charge, I think you have to market. I think Sam was saying it's a joint responsibility between the artist and the promoter. And you have to tell everybody, and you have to tell them at least 3 times, really. Hey, this gig's happening, it's going to be amazing. Because the amount of people that say, oh, I forgot. Oh, I really meant to come to that. And they really genuinely mean that they were going to come. But we're in this weird corona of every day is rolling into another. And suddenly, is it Friday? Is it Monday? What did I have to eat yesterday? Can't remember. So I think just gently, nicely, authentically being in people's faces.
Yeah, Will?
Yeah, just following on from what Hannah was saying about selling tickets, another way of funding online gigs is just doing an online gig and stick a PayPal link on it. A lot of people I know are actually doing quite well out of that because people want to support musicians and people want to support their friends of friends or just musicians they don't know. And they like to support. Yeah, and it's a good way, even if they just if they bung £1 in, whatever, it can really add up. Just stick a PayPal link on it.
Cool. We've had another question come in about, has anyone had anything to do with the Musicians Union? Will, yeah?
Yes, they're wonderful. I can't speak highly enough about the MU. They're worth joining. If you're going into music with any level of sort of career ambition, then join the MU. They're worth it for the public liability insurance alone. You're covered, I think it's £2 million, so that just in the horrific chance of an amp exploding and killing someone in a bar, I mean, that's not going to happen. But with the public liability insurance, you're covered, and you've got that. You've got lawyers on hand. They give you insurance for your gear. The number of times when I was in my previous band and we were sorting out record deals and stuff, they went through all of my contracts, gave me advice. I can't recommend them enough. I would join personally.
And I was going to say that they're also great if I'm in the MU, but I mainly use it as a music teacher. And it's the same thing. Often, if you do become a gig musician, you will be teaching at some time, and they have great lesson like contracts for students, lesson plans, things like that. Not necessarily gig things, but they are really good. And they've been a great help to a lot of people during COVID-19 as well.
Sounds very interesting. I'm sure a lot of people will be looking that up now. Do we have time for any more questions? What's time check?
20 past. We've got a few extra questions actually.
Well, we've already talked a bit about networking, and you said it really important. Yeah. So what ways can you network, and how important do you think networking is, especially for someone starting off as a musician? Yeah, Sam?
So you don't necessarily just have to perform at a gig. Go and watch gigs. I actually, the first ever festival that I worked for, I got to know the people running it just by going to their gigs and enjoying the music and chatting to them. And it is about not just performing, but building this community around you. As much as possible, support your friends, support other musicians, and support the promoters. If you wanted to get a gig with a promoter and you've been constantly going to their gigs, it's very likely they're going to help you out and put you on as well.
Anyone else want to say something?
Okay, so next thing coming, perhaps we could talk about sort of a bit more about marketing and social media or posters and how to like get your name out there with social media and everything. Anyone has anything to say? Yes, Will?
I have no idea what I'm doing with social media, but whatever I am doing seems to work. And it's what we've been talking about before, just being authentic, being honest, being nice. And through this, like, I've ended up chatting to loads of record labels, quite well-known bands, and because of that, they end up listening to our stuff. And it's just I don't like thinking of it as networking, even though it is, but networking sounds so clinical. And it's just, with a lot of it, it starts out with me seeing a song by a band I like and saying, this is amazing, it reminds me of such and such. Them going, oh, I really like that band, and then just becoming a chat. And yeah, I honestly, I don't necessarily go into it with much of a plan, but you can get to know all sorts of people online through just, yeah, mutual interests, really. And through that, they can find you. And yeah, it seems to work.
Yes, Hannah?
Well, it comes as no surprise that I echo Will's comments that I'm also not entirely sure what I'm doing with social media. I know that people respond to human faces. So I've become disappointed in the past where I'm like, I've done something that to me is a really credible achievement and it gets like 20 likes. And then I put a picture of me looking potentially quite nice and it gets 100 likes. And I'm like, oh, it's so frustrating because you want to be recognized for your music. But it's also understanding that people like faces. People don't like heaps of text. Just aside from social media, I think mailing lists are really important because that is something that you own. You've got your mailing list. If Facebook disappears tomorrow because the government decides that they don't like it, like in China, you can't get Facebook. If all of those social media channels disappear, what have you got that you've actually got that's yours? And those email addresses are actually gold dust. That is the most that's your real estate, if you like, because those are people that have already decided to engage with you. So when you're doing a gig, if it's in person, have a clipboard, have a friend who's saying, hey, would you like to sign up? Hey, would you like to, buy a CD or whatever merchandise you might have? Hey, did you know that there's another gig? But get those email addresses because that is a way of keeping in touch with people and just pop in their inbox. Create something that's newsworthy, don't spam them. But I think Sam mentioned high quality images. Try and make it look as professional as you can. Sorry, I'll shut up. Will next.
You actually beat me to it because I was about to say high quality images. If it's not so much a social media thing, but if you've got a gig, get a good poster. And a good way of doing that it is through networking. Get to know local artists. It doesn't have to all be music. No, artists, designers, and sort of speak to anybody in the arts and get a proper artsy community and build that up. And through meeting artists, I mean, we've had gigs in art galleries in London, and it's just through getting to know people and being nice again.
Great. Sam, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was going to say on the email lists, like email contact lists, it's also really good to be consistent. Some of the best email chains I've got, for example, a musician called Funky and the Two-Tone Baby does a monthly newsletter that isn't just news about gigs. He might post a video there, various things he's done, but it's every single month on the dot. And I actually do read through it because it's high quality, and I know it's when it's in my inbox there'll be something interesting there. So consistency as well as quality is always good. Even on your social media, if you only post maybe once while you're just doing gigs or just trying to advertise and hammer it down, people will end up not listening to that. Try and make it as interesting as possible. Give little snippets of music, give little snippets of artwork. Don't just be trying to advertise and push all the time.
Great. Yeah, Hannah, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I think sometimes, certainly talking with some of my artist friends, we can feel a bit shy about oversharing and other people really want to know. But I know when I've got an artist that I really like, and maybe they live in another country, so the chance of me going to a gig is quite rare. I love seeing behind the scenes. I love knowing their process. I'm such a geek. If they're like, hey, I just wrote this song, I don't even know if I like it. I'm like, let me hear that. Let me hear it. If it's a work in progress, I don't care. If it's you playing with your cat, I kind of don't care. Just put that content in there because we want to know. This is the thing with artists. We really want to know them as a whole, whether that's the real whole that they're sharing. Hey.
Yeah, I completely relate to that. Sam, yeah, did you want to say something else?
I was going to say the other thing is not just social media. Say if you have a gig, talk to the local press in a good time in advance, especially for small towns like Penrith, anywhere in Cumbria. we don't have a lot of news all the time, and actually I've had some amazing articles on gigs that I've put on, just because it's happening. If you give a press release, which is different to a press kit, write a little bio about what's going to happen with the different bands, nice footage, and yeah, you could potentially be seen to thousands of people, plus their websites and their social medias. And also ask the bands, if you're with a gig with bands, get every band to share stuff, not just yourselves.
Everyone's put their hands up.
Yeah, I think Hannah went first, I think.
I'll try and be incredibly quick. I used to work in PR, and if anybody's unsure what a press release is, 5 W's plus H. Who, what, why, where, when, how. Who's doing it? Where are they doing it? What are they doing? Give us the details. How do they get information? How do they book a ticket? Why is it exciting? Include a quote. I've noticed somebody's mentioned the BBC introducing a local radio. Absolutely, because then you're getting a little foot in. I'm from Leicester originally, and there's Dean Jackson. He has actually launched quite a few careers because he does the East Midlands, Nottingham, so Nottingham, Leicester and Derby. And if you manage to get in with somebody like Dean, he could literally make such a huge difference to you, and you get paid. You've got your tracks registered with PRS. Once that track is on the radio, it might be pennies, but hey, you're finally actually making an income. And I think it's really important that we do treat this as a job as well. How are we going to monetize this? Because for all the best will in the world, we've got to get paid at some point as well. We have to.
Will, I think you were next.
Yeah, just following on from the BBC introducing thing. BBC introducing is wonderful. If you have songs, and upload your best songs, don't load everything. But another really, really useful website is freshonthenet.co.uk, I think it is. It's run by Tom Robinson of Six Music, and they have a weekly, I think it's weekly, a Dropbox on SoundCloud where you can upload songs. Again, just upload your best ones, but they get listened to by the Fresh on the Net moderators. They include musicians, they include critics, they include Tom Robinson of Six Music, and then they select. It goes to a public vote. It's not a public vote that you advertise. So it quietly goes to a vote, and then if you're selected as one of the favourites, it goes up on the site. It can lead to airplay on Six Music. It did for us. The way my little brother got started was my first ever song I recorded. I sent to Fresh on the Net. It got picked as one of the favourites. Tom Robinson, it was his favourite of the week, so he played it on Six Music, which led to a few other people on Six Music playing it. And it was purely from uploading to a site that nobody knew I'd done it. I didn't tell anyone I'd done it. I didn't advertise it. So you can quietly just go, here, listen to this. And worst thing that would have happened is I didn't get a reply. And as it turned out, ended up getting airplay on, quite a lot of airplay, to be honest. It's a wonderful site, and it has loads of information for how to send a press pack, how to send press releases. It has advice on pretty much everything that is being asked tonight. To be honest, it's really worth going on Fresh on the Net. It's a really, really good site.
Definitely gonna go and look at that. Someone's asked about contracts. So whose role is it to write a contract? Is it important, and should you do a contract even if it's a small gig? Yes, Sam? I think you're on mute.
One thing to say, first of all, a contract doesn't necessarily have to be written down as a full thing. You can have a verbal contract, but the bare minimum is an email chain. If you've promised certain things in an email for a venue type of thing, that for most small gigs, that should be enough. If you want to write, I would find, say for pub gigs, you might put people off straight away going in, we want a contract. but an email chain should be sufficient enough, let's say, to agree things, as long as they're written down, should be enough while you're starting out. It's as soon as you get into that bigger where you're selling a lot of tickets, venues, that I'd say a contract is more important.
Cool. We've had another question come in. Should you send demos to venues? Yes, Sam?
Yeah, I would say physical demos like CDs. A lot of people in their laptops don't have CDs. People don't have CD players. You're more likely to find every venue or pub or anywhere will have an email. You're probably much better sending it a demo online through that way with your press kit, which we talked about, than a CD that's burned. The only difference is say you have an album coming out and you've got nice artwork, everything's nice, or something interesting and different, maybe then you want to send it to select people, but it would be cheaper and probably more effective by sending online by email. And the other thing I'd like to say as well, actually, one of the worst things you can do is to spam promoters. If you're sending stuff constantly, it actually has a negative effect. Just about everyone will listen to your music. They're not gonna get given a demo and an email and not listen to it, especially if it's a music promoter. And you might find in a few months they've got a gig that you would be perfect for and put you on. Have patience. Just a maybe just like a reminder every couple of months, or if you've got something new, but no constant spamming. I've had people message me almost 2-3 times a week for weeks on end, and it just doesn't work,
Yeah, Will?
That's the only thing I'd add to that is know who you're contacting, and I don't mean on a personal level, but if you're in a techno band and you're emailing a metal venue, don't just look up a list of venues and email them all. Look up venues that are likely to play your kind of music and are likely to respond to you, because otherwise, you are just spamming. And I think word would get around that you're just sort of throwing in the dark without having actually done any research.
Cool. I don't know how much time we've got left. This might be our last question, I'm not sure. But someone's asked, how are artists paid for gigs, especially smaller ones?
I'll go with that. So say often a pub gig, like everything, it's about sales. That business needs to make money for you to also make money. So for instance, I've run pub gigs where we'd get either a set fee based on like their predicted sales of alcohol or beer or food or anything, or a percentage, which is often more likely, say 10% of the bar profits of the night. And you've got to know your audience, and if it's going to be a busy pub on a Friday night, you're probably going to get a much higher fee than say a Wednesday afternoon. But what I found that works really well when I've run monthly gigs and that kind of thing is just put a hat round, same as the online gigs. And it's actually amazing if people enjoy it or have enjoyed the night and have come down for free. The amount of times we've made double, triple the amount that the bar was paying is great. And the other thing is get some merchandise as well. It can be little badges, pins that don't cost a lot, stickers, sell them for £1. You'll find people will buy them and stick them to places, and you'll get more visual knowledge of your band.
Yeah, Will?
Yeah, just echoing exactly what Sam said. Merchandising is absolutely key. if people are at your gig already, they want to support you. People really do want to support you. So if you see a band and you've had a good night watching them, you want to buy things off them. You want to give them your money and take something home as a memory. Just another way that you can make money as a band, but it is a higher risk way. If you know you've got a following, if you know that you can get people through the door, you can hire venues. It's, as I say, if it goes wrong, you're out of pocket. But if you know you can get people in, then you know that you'll make money out of it. So that is another way of going about it.
I think that's it. Oh, Sam, did you? Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not just about knowing, there's a difference as well. If you can get your friends and family in on a paid gig, often that first ever gig that you do with a ticketed show, you'll get a lot of people. But the more you do them, the less familiar faces you see at your gigs actually is a good sign of how you're doing. If it's always friends and family, you might do a ticketed gig and you'll be more disappointed until when you get to a point where you're playing a show, or for me, it's when I've put on a show and I don't recognize anyone there, is a good sign, other than people that you've met maybe through just coming through your shows.
Okay, I think that's time for us to wrap up now. So thank you all for coming. It's been really insightful. I've made 6 pages of notes. Does anyone want to give a shout out to any of their own projects that's going on? Yeah, Will?
We have just released a single. So if you go online, it's on, it's like My Little Brother with No Spaces. There's a song called Janie that's out in all of the usual places. And yeah, that's us. So have a listen.
I've got my next online gig on Thursday next week. It's called 3 Chords and the Truth. It's me and 2 artists, and my Instagram is I am Hannah Music UK.
And Soulfest isn't happening this year, obviously, because of COVID-19. But so our festival, Soulfest, will be running August Bank Holiday 2021. But if you want to, send a demo, please go onto our website, and I will listen to them. I listen to every demo that goes on there. That's www.soulfest.co.uk.
Okay, great. So if anyone watching this wants to see it again, the whole webinar video will be up on the BlueJam Arts YouTube channel. And if you want to learn anything else about BlueJam Arts and the company, you can go to their Facebook and Instagram. Just type in BlueJam Arts and all information will be on there. We do have another webinar coming up. I think it's in about 2 weeks' time, I'm not sure. And it is about producing music at home